eats cambium from many trees, which is inside of the bark, as well as roots and tubers, and they will what we call girdle a tree, where they eat the cambium around the entire base of the tree, and that disrupts the flow of nutrients and water, the xylem and phloem, and that will kill a tree. Which is why in Eagle Marsh they started wrapping the tree with chicken wire and things like that to try to help it from being girdled. Right? Once extirpated from the state, which means locally extinct, Indiana almost didn't have any beaver. Why? Furs, hunted for pelts. We almost lost beavers completely in the United States because of the fur trade. Repatriated, beginning in 1935, and now you find them everywhere. Right? To the point where they can be kind of a nuisance. But the thing about beaver nuisances is that there's always more beaver. So if you take out a beaver, there's going to be a new beaver there. So it's really hard to get rid of them. So you have to learn how to live with them, which is also kind of hard. A keystone species, because they can make things like that. And this is another ecosystem engineer where they generate whole new ecosystems. They built a dam. Now instead of a river, it's a pond. So that allows very different fish, insects, birds to actually live in that area. If you take out the dam, it becomes a river again that kills all of those pond fish, pond insects, and that changes the ecosystem completely. So they are extremely valuable. They also make things like that. I've had to get rid of a beaver lodge. It takes forever because it's packed with mud and gunk, and it's so hard to get stuff out of there. It can take days. It's crazy. But then they just build it again, which is why you live with them.
But the mud and that's just because it washes on the
They will actually paste mud and things like that on it. It's kind of like a cement. Beaver tracks, the front foot is like a raccoon. The back foot is that huge webbed foot. And then you'll get that tail drag, and it's much flatter, much wider tail. Okay? I have a taxidermy, a museum prep of a beaver that I didn't bring because I don't have room. It was like that big. It's a chonkers. Yeah, they're big animals. Now let's go small. This is a meadow vole, or Microtus pennsylvanicus. Is this Orchard? Yeah, this is a different one, but it's essentially the same thing. Meadow vole. Very common. They are everywhere, but highly inconspicuous. Right? So they're inconspicuous because they create ground runways in grasses. So if you look under big patches of grass, say in Eagle Marsh, something like that, and you see little tunnels underneath it, that's these guys. And they make highways of tunnels that go everywhere, and they just run around those instead of going on top of the grasses. Why? Hawks. If they're on top of the grass, they're going to be eaten by a hawk, kestrel, you name it. Right? Associated with grassy fields, marshes, and meadow voles make up the majority of the diet of red-tailed hawks, great horned owls, barred owls. These guys are the ones that are eaten the most. And so therefore, they are incredibly important. They're also cute. Right? It's essentially a mouse. It's a different type of critter altogether. Looks like a mouse, but their ears aren't large enough to extend past their fur. They also have much shorter tails. So that's the Pennsylvanicus. They have gray underfur. There's another one that's around here called Ochergaster, which is not the meadow vole, the prairie vole, I think. I don't remember common names. They have an orange belly, which this is an Ochergaster. It has kind of an orange tinge to it. And that's kind of the only way that you can identify them.
So what are the difference between this one and the mouse?
The ears, the tail. Yep, the tail is much shorter. They also are bigger in general. And then the ears, this one's busted, but the ears are bigger in the mouse. They extend outside of the fur, where this one, the ears are covered by the fur. The skulls are different too. I can show you that, but they're much more flask-shaped, but you don't need to know that. Peromyscus. Peromyscus sp. So I put SPP dot there because you can know what's called the genus, which is Peromyscus, but you can't know the specific species. There are two Peromyscus species around here, which is the white-footed field mouse and the deer mouse. The only way you can differentiate them is if you check their genetics. That's it. But if you go down to the Smoky Mountains, there is morphological differences, but just not up here, which is annoying. So I just call it Peromyscus because we don't know. Right? But this is our native mouse. And they're cute. They're stinking cute. Relatively small. Right? They have a brown upper part of the tail. Right? And they actually have a counter shading, which is very cool. Their backs are brown. Their bellies are white. And these guys are climbers. They'll be on the forest floor where they blend in with their backs. And they'll be up in the trees where they blend in with the sun in the sky with their bellies. So they are camouflaged no matter what area that they are. So that's the Peromyscus. You can also have the meadow jumping mouse, which I have. I forgot to bring it. But the meadow jumping mouse is about this size, maybe a little bit smaller, but the tail comes down to here. They are awesome. And also their feet are about double the size because they're jumping mouse. They've evolved to jump around, whereas this one's good at running. Right? You can see the tail. Here's the big chonker feet. The tail comes up through here and wraps around through there. It's very big. And we've caught one in Eagle Marsh, and we've got a lot more pictures of them using camera traps. So they're there. And also we saw one in Fox Island as well. All right, so out of rodents into lagomorphs. Lagomorphs. Eastern cottontail is the only lagomorph that we have here. And that's the lagomorphs of the rabbits and the pikas. Pikas are actually rabbits. Do I have pikas on here? No, I talk about them in mammalogy. Pikas are like giant hamsters, but they're actually not rodents. And you can only find them in the Rocky Mountains, and they're going extinct, which is sad. Look them up. Pikas are actually the muse for Pikachu. Pikachu. That's how they base it off of. Eat anything that grows, any plant. Average life expectancy about 6 months because they get eaten really quick. Up to 7 litters. 7 batches of rabbit babies every single year. So they get eaten, but they mate like rabbits, right? And make a bunch of rabbit babies. And what's super cool about these guys is that they have 4 upper incisors. So they have 2 in front, kind of like rodent teeth. They grow continuously. And they have 2 right behind those 2. So if you find a skull, there's a skull in here. I might try to open it. But, actually, can I? I'll do it later. So they're little peg-like teeth behind the incisors. So if you see incisors behind incisors, that's going to be a rabbit. Okay?
And the front ones wear down?
Yeah. They continuously grow just like a rodent's, right? So cottontail, the rabbit scat, they're little orbs, right? Smaller than deer pellets, 5 to 10 or more, about 3/8 of an inch, found wherever they eat, and they are actually coprophagous, which means they eat their poop, eat their butts. Coprophagy. And that's hindgut fermentation. So hindgut fermentation is where they ferment cellulose in their intestine, right? That means they break down cellulose even more and are able to extract stuff out of it when that stuff is already in their intestines, which isn't super effective because that's where you absorb all of the good nutrients in your intestine. So the only time that they gain access to those good nutrients is after it's almost been all the way through their intestine. So they just eat it again and send it back through their intestine. Right? Yeah, really. Yeah, it's essentially. Well, yeah, that sounds like a joke, but they actually use probiotics to ferment it in the first place. So this fermentation happens with bacteria. And there's foregut fermenters, and those are the guys that have 4 chambers of their stomachs, deer, cows. And that's all the fermentation, the breaking down of the cellulose happens in one of those stomachs. And they sick a bunch of bacteria, probiotics onto it. And that's what does it for them. Okay? Rabbit tracks, these are cool. There's 2 tracks in the front, and then you got 1 and 1 in the back. Right? These are the hind feet. These are the front feet. Right? So they push off with their front feet, and they bring their hind feet forward, and that happens to hit back there. And then they push off with their hind feet, and they bring their front feet forward. So they're going this way. Hind feet, front feet. Right? But the pattern is 2, 1, 1.
So the other one is upside.
So it's the other way, but hind feet going this way. Right? And so this way, they're running that way. Hind feet, hind feet, hind feet, hind feet. Okay? And the behavior of these guys, they're going in a straight line, running as fast as they can. Right? They're not going to trees or anything like that. Order Insectivora. These are insect eaters. They tend to have long pointed nose and tiny bead-like eyes. They are closely related to bats, although recently us mammalogists decided to take all these insectivora critters and break them apart into completely different orders. Right? So we still group them as insectivora, but that's no longer the evolutionary history or truth there. We've decided and determined that they're actually different critters. Right? Scalopus aquaticus are the eastern mole. These guys, they're fossorial, which means they live underground, they burrow, they make tunnels, things like that. Dense perpendicular fur. So what's cool about moles is they don't have napes. A nape is what exists on dogs and cats, where you have a dog and you're petting the dog, and every once in a while you're like, and you pet against the grain. That's a nape, right? The fur all lays in a certain way. Does that make sense? These guys don't have napes. Or they have fur napes that kind of are haphazard and they lay in different directions. Why? They're going in holes, and they dig these holes, and they have to back up. And if they back up and they have a nape, they're going against the grain of their fur, and that's going to cause the fur to start falling out. So they don't have one. And actually, these guys, their fur is so stinking soft. I should have brought one. Super cool guys. Can dig 13 feet per hour. And they actually migrate. Instead of horizontal migration, they migrate vertically. During the winter, they're going to dig further down in order to avoid freezing and things like that. Eat mostly earthworms, active all winter. Really cute, but weird. They have tons of muscle around their pecs to the point where you can't actually scruff them like a mother cat does. That's how we usually hold these small guys. So there's just little bit of fur because all of it's muscle and really big hands, right? Super strong guys.
I'm really surprised to see eat mostly earthworms.
Mhm.
What about grubs?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what, they put the scare tactics on, if you got, grubs, you've got moles or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, they make these mole tunnels as well. I would definitely agree that they probably eat those as well. Have you seen this? This is a star-nosed mole. Ew, that's so cool. It's so cute. Now, I will tell you why it's awesome. Yeah, David Gordon. This is another one, except that me and Brad, the DNR biologists, are thinking are coming into northeastern Indiana. In fact, we have actual observations of them. They started in the northeast, and they're coming down. And so if you've seen that, tell me, and I will come and trap them because they're so cool. Live trap them, right? So they have really big hands, like a mole. They have a long tail that's actually flattened because they swim. This is a semi-aquatic mole.
Oh my God.
Yep, and then you'll find them building tunnels around creeks, like right out here. I actually think they might be out here. I need to start trapping. Not only that, but these tentacles, they're actually projections off their nose. They're all tactile because they swim down into the benthos and dig them in there and try to find grubs and things like that. But what's even cooler is that they can grab bubbles with those noses and scuba dive with that bubble. Yeah. So maybe not cute, but super cool, and I want to find them. Right? So if you see them, my email's on pfw.com. Tell me about it. Short-tail, or a northern short-tailed shrew. This guy kind of looks like a mouse, but you can't really see the eyes, although they do exist. Kind of look like a little cigar. Right? This is an omnivore. They will eat everything and anything that they come across of because their metabolisms are so quick that if they stop eating for a prolonged period of time, they will die. They are the mammalian equivalent of a hummingbird. Because a hummingbird is the exact same way. Right? This is the second or the third of 3 venomous mammals of the world. And we have them around here. They secrete venom in their teeth through their saliva. And it's a neurotoxin, so it will kind of paralyze. It's not nearly as bad as some others. So yeah, that's scary, but just don't pick up a shrew and you'll be all right. Even though it's actually not powerful enough to really do anything to a human. Not really. Not so much. Maybe a little bit. They can echolocate as well, like a bat. That's stinking cool too. In fact, there's a lot of other mammals that can do that. Not nearly as good as a bat. We'll talk about that more later. Live 1.5 years. Do not hibernate, because if they did, they would starve to death and die really quickly. Here's another one. This is a different type of shrew. That's a full-grown adult. And this is actually not the smallest one that we probably have around here. We have the pygmy shrew here in Indiana, and that is the contender for the smallest mammal in the world, which is maybe 2/3 of this size. All right, got about half an hour. Order Chiroptera. Yep, these are the batty bats. Now, Chiroptera, the word, means hand wing, which makes sense. Their wings, hand wings. Their wings are made from their hands, right? They just have skin extending between their fingers. In fact, a bat has the same bones in its arm as you do right now. Its fingers are just extended like 10 times the normal length. Right? So if I were to take your fingers and stretch them out to like that wall, and then string a bunch of skin around them, you'd have the same wing as a bat, but you still couldn't fly because you're too big. Just sad. This is the largest bat in the world, which is the Malayan flying fox, and has a wingspan of about that. But its body is about the size of a chihuahua. It's all wing, right? It's a chihuahua with wings. and it eats fruit, right? All of the flying foxes, which are really bats, all of the big-bodied bats, they only eat fruits. They're not going to carry away your chihuahua. Malaysia. So all of the big-bodied bats are all old world, so Africa, Australia, Asia, things like that. We don't have any big-bodied bats here. This is Ectophyla alba. Don't need to remember that. It's a Honduran white bat. Puffball bats. This is the, if people go, ooh, bats, ooh, so ugly, I show them that. And, yeah, show them the marshmallows. But this bat is a tent-making bat. Found down in Costa Rica and places like that, Honduras. And they come up to these big banana-type leaf, and they bite down the ridges, and then the leaves kind of sag, and then they roost up underneath it. And then eventually that leaf dies, and they go to another leaf and do the same thing. Super cool. So if you ever happen to be in Costa Rica or something like that, we've done this. If you see a leaf that's folded over, look underneath that. You could find, there's actually a bunch of different leaf-making bats. Super cool. The bats around here are not like that. Bats of northeastern Indiana. We can divide them into our migrants, and these are bats that will migrate just like birds. We have the hoary bat, which is the largest bat in Indiana. Hoary bat. That's the largest bat in Indiana. Contender for the largest bat in North America. There's one bigger, not by much. And this is a migrating bat. And these guys can go from Canada to Belize. And this is the only bat that is endemic, which means native, to Hawaii. In fact, it's the only mammal that's endemic to Hawaii because it's the only one strong enough to migrate and make the journey over there. Right? So only native mammal in Hawaii. Canada to Belize, so Central South America. We have the silver-haired bat, which is what we call our older chiroptologists. Silver-haired bats. I'm starting to be called that. We have the eastern red bats, which the males are bright red. The females are brown. So they have sexual dimorphism like a cardinal. We have no idea why. It would suggest that there's some sort of like sexual selection. The females prefer brightly colored males, but they select males in the middle of the night. I don't know how that works. So I don't know if we'll ever know because it's so hard to watch the behavior of bats because they fly around at night.
Are those the ones that will bury in the leaves?
Yep, they will fold. Actually, these two guys have fur on their tails, and when they're sleeping, they'll tuck their tails up, and it's a blanket, right? And these guys will hide in the foliage on the ground during the winter. So leave your leaves, right? Because they could have a bat in there. And don't mow them. Here's our hibernators. These guys hibernate during the winter. And all these guys are relatively small and brown. We have the Indiana bat, which is federally endangered. We have the little brown bat, which is going to be listed to be endangered probably in the next 2 years. We have the northern long-eared bat, which is now federally endangered. We have the tricolored bat, which was just proposed to be listed as endangered. We have the big brown bat, which is the most common bat in North America. And if you have a story about a bat, it's a big brown bat. Which a big brown bat is still about the size of your thumb, at least the body. And that's big for our bats. And then we have the evening bat, which is state endangered. Although they're actually doing pretty well. I think we're going to delist them on the state pretty soon.
So only the first two are
Endangered, endangered, going to be endangered, going to be endangered. These two are doing all right. We'll talk about why they're endangered later. So these guys have wings. They are the only true powered, they're the only mammals to have true powered flight. So they can actually achieve lift and lift off the ground. There are flying squirrels. They don't fly. They glide, right? They extend their wings, which is just skin, and they'll glide between tree and tree. This is the only one that can actively fly. They can also echolocate. All right, and echolocation is essentially sonar, right? It's emitting a really high frequency vocalization, right? Screech, essentially. The frequency is so high that we cannot hear it, but because it's such a high frequency, it bounces off of things. And as the echo comes back to the bat, they can pick up a lot of detail of the object that it reflected off of, right? So a bat can hear size, shape, a location of movement or a vector of movement, speed. They can hear everything that we can see except for color. They can hear texture, right, using this echolocation. And what's cool about echolocation, this is frequency and this is time in milliseconds. So very quick calls. There can be different types of echolocation, and each bat species has a specific type of echolocation call. So if we can record their echolocation calls, we can usually, there's some overlap, identify those calls to a specific species of bats, which is what my lab does. We've set out dozens of acoustic detectors, which can record ultrasound, and then we identify each one of those calls to species to see what bats we have in the area. Right? Very effective. And this echolocation is very good at making sure that the bats don't collide into each other when they're flying or when they're swarming. Right? This is a train tunnel, and I don't know what bat species these are, but you're going to be hard-pressed to find two bats colliding into one another because their echolocation is so good that they know where all of their other bat friends are as they're flying through it. Right? If you think about this, bats can fly in a forest with hundreds of trees and not just fly into a tree. And they're flying, some bats can fly up to 100 miles per hour. They can fly extremely fast and not collide into a tree. Their echolocation is so effective. And I've done this before. I've been in a hibernacula with 75,000 bats. So cool. And they're swarming out of it. They're going out at dusk to go and feed on insects. And I'm standing at the entrance where all the bats are flying over me. And you turn off your light because you're in the middle of the cave, and all you hear is wing flaps, and they never touch you. You can stand where there's hundreds of thousands of bats flying around you, and they'll never touch you. So cool. I've only been touched by one bat in mid-flight, and that's only because it was fighting another bat, and it just happened to just graze me with its wing. I was like, oh, it's so cool. I was so excited about it. Just because it never happens.